Because we have Victoria Atkins. Victoria is the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, and we'll ask her that very same question. Victoria, how come you don't know where all these people are?
Good morning, everyone. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. And I hope we'll be able to speak about the NHS Constitution in a moment. But the issue of Rwanda is really important because we are determined to send out this deterrent message to people who are perhaps thinking of making that journey across the European continent to the United Kingdom.
But if you can't find them, what's the point?
But if they do so illegally, that they will not be allowed to stay. So if I may just deal with this point about the numbers. So we know that the Home Office has identified the first cohort of people that are to be removed to Rwanda. Now that we've passed the Act, no thanks to Labour, they voted against it more than 100 times, tackling immigration measures more than 100 times. But now, of course, we have to get down to the business of getting people onto those flights. We've chartered the flights. We have the airfields on standby. We've got the staff ready.
But you can't find them. Sorry, I keep going back to this. How come you've lost half of them?
So, on this point about the numbers, though, Eamonn, it's important to understand there are different arrangements for different people. So, for example, some people are detained, so others are allowed to live with friends or families, but they should be reporting into the Home Office regularly so that they keep that relationship up. Now, of course, the Home Office will be checking these people and will be finding these people. You know, the law enforcement visits massively increased in the last year. That's important because we have to have the enforcement message around this as well as the deterrence message.
But I don't know why anyone should believe that you think you will find these people. I mean, your own impact assessment was that a few people might disappear through the system, but it appears a huge miscalculation. When you talk about the deterrent effect of Rwanda, do you ever expect to be losing half of those that your own government earmarked for removal? The incentive of £49 a week and also free accommodation is clearly not enough to keep them checking in with you.
So I'd ask everyone to look at the evidence of what we've done in the last year. So in the last year, we saw the number of small boats crossings fall by a third.
Yeah,
this
but
was
none of that's important. If these people get to our country and then they disappear, they can just go where they want, they can do what they want, and you haven't got a clue where they are.
But forgive me, Eamonn, it is important because across the rest of the European continent saw a huge increase in people coming into Europe, whereas we saw a reduction.
Come on in, we'll bring you through the borders, we'll stick you up in a hotel and then you can disappear, do what you want. Anyway.
And what is more, if I may just finish, we also removed 25,000 people last year. Now, nobody pretends this is easy. Nobody pretends, unlike the Labour Party, that there are magic solutions to this. It is hard grind, but we have passed this piece of legislation this week. That is good news. We know that it will begin to have a deterrent effect, and we will get the first flights off the ground
forgive me for
weeks.
interrupting, Victoria, but 5,700 people identified by the Home Office, 2,145 are continuing to check in with the Home Office. 3,557 have absconded. That cannot be, by any measure, that cannot be claimed to be a success or part of the plan.
But law enforcement will be after these people. So that isn't the end of the story by any means. And we know the success that law enforcement have had, and there's a range of measures that they can use that they've had, not just in removing 25,000 immigrants last year, but also importantly making immigration raids and closing some 7,000 bank accounts so that people cannot live or work in the United Kingdom once they have if they fall off the radar. So again, nobody, the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, none of us have pretended this is easy. We are up against organised crime gangs who are, they make a business out of this, but we are taking measures to, first of all, stop the flow of people coming into the UK, and then we are dealing with them when they are here. And that's why the Rwanda Act is such an important piece of legislation.
Your speciality now, this is a big thing today. You are announcing, I don't know if you're announcing it as government or you're announcing it on behalf of the NHS or the NHS is announcing it, but the NHS will today declare that sex is a matter of biology. and this is a significant shift against gender ideology. Tell us more.
Yes, so the NHS Constitution is the document that brings together the values and the principles of the NHS. And this is a significant document because it sets out our rights and our responsibilities as patients, as members of staff, and also as members of the public. And we are announcing today a consultation on reshaping and updating that Constitution. It happens every decade, and this is that moment now. And what we want to do is confirm that biological sex is a right and a responsibility within the health service, so that if, for example, someone wants to have intimate care conducted by a person of the same biological sex as them, then they can request that, and that request will not be dismissed, it won't be sneered at, it will be treated with respect, because we want to treat patients with privacy, with dignity and with safety. And not only are we looking at biological sex, there are many other important issues, including, for example, we are bringing in what's called Martha's Rule. We haven't called it that in the documentation because we want to make sure that everybody understands. But it's that idea that if your loved one's physiological condition starts to deteriorate suddenly, that you can get a second pair of eyes to look over them to check that the diagnosis and the treatment is correct. That's really important. There's also some really important work in there about unpaid carers, making sure that their views are taken into account, and also the value of work, which of course is something that we've been talking about a lot recently.
On the issue of biology, you know, a lot of our audience will say this is common sense and see this move as a positive one. Are you taking the NHS with you, though, on this? I mean, the NHS bosses have said that actually you're dragging the organisation into pre-election culture wars, and you should instead be focusing on tackling A&E waiting times or sorting out decrepit NHS facilities. I mean, it's a legitimate point, isn't it? You shouldn't be just going after headlines, trying to roll up your sleeves and sort those things out, including the junior doctors' industrial strikes.
So we are, but we also think that given this is a once-in-a-decade moment, it is important that we set those principles very much in the foundations of the NHS. And in fairness to the NHS, it is one organisation that has come out with this rather odd comment about culture wars. I would have thought
Matthew Taylor, the chief executive of the NHS Confederation.
Yes, one would have thought that he would be as uncomfortable as I am at the eradication of women from our language. When I visit a maternity unit, recently I was told that service users used the maternity unit, and I realised eventually they meant women. Or mums-to-be, but instead they were using this very, very inhuman, I think, language of service users. We want to get rid of that. We want the language to be clear. We want it to be, as you say, used with common sense, because that is how, you know, we ensure that people understand what their care needs are, what they should be asking for, what doctors are explaining to them. And so the views of one organisation, I don't think, should be taken as indicative of the organisation as a whole. In fact, NHS providers have come out in support of our efforts to bring privacy, dignity and safety into the very foundations of this document, but also to ensure that we're using language that we all understand. So, as one of your panellists has said, you know, the idea that the word chest feeding is used instead of breastfeeding. I just think, you know, we should be spending far more time, as you rightly say, looking after waiting lists, making sure that we're building on the waiting list reductions that we've seen in the last 5 months.
It'll get a lot of people talking today, Secretary of State. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for explaining that.